Good morning, everybody. Wow, thank you for being here. 1 week after Bernie and I were married 34 years ago, we moved into an apartment complex in Washington, D.C. A woman named Angie lived 1 floor down. Every morning, Angie left for work dressed in the uniform of a Washington bureaucrat. You know, the blue blazer, the white blouse, and the blue skirt hitting just a little below the knee. Now, I'm ashamed to admit this, but for a long time, the partially conscious and partially unconscious narrative I believed about Angie was, and strictly based on her work attire, was that Angie led a sad, stultifying life. Then, one day, Bernie and I attended a wedding in a beautiful downtown ballroom. The groom was an Egyptian, so many of the traditions at the wedding were a part of Egyptian culture. As guests were finishing their dessert, an exquisite, exotic belly dancer appeared, balancing a silver candelabra on her head, which held 12 lit candles, all while vibrating continuously. When she got to within a few inches of Bernie and me, she locked eyes with ours, smiled warmly, and winked. In that moment, Bernie and I realized this exotic dancer is Angie, who lives downstairs. I had to create a whole new narrative. Psychologist Martin Seligman talks about 3 mindsets that prevent our moving through life's traumas and losses and creating new narratives. Incidentally, all 3 of these mindsets begin with the letter P, which will help some of us remember them. The 3 P words can be roadblocks to spiritual, emotional, and psychological well-being. In countless creative ways, Recovery Cafe addresses these 3 mindsets and calls forth new narratives in the lives of our members, staff, and volunteers. The first mindset is pervasiveness. When people walk into Recovery Cafe for the first time, suffering from homelessness or addiction or some other mental health challenge, they have often lost touch with their deepest, truest self, which is love. Only a loving community committed to seeing and nurturing our deepest, truest selves can free us from the mindset that our struggle or our illness is pervasive, or our struggle, our illness is us. The mother of a 24-year-old who died of an opioid overdose put it this way: addiction is a disease that people should know about, but addiction is not who Kelsey was. Kelsey was my child, my love, my life. Another roadblock to spiritual, emotional, and psychological well-being is the mindset of permanence. This is the mindset that tells us the pit I am in is permanent, hopeless, no way out. As some of you know, almost 20 years ago, I experienced a trauma that landed me in a pit of depression. During that time, my friend Dorothy told me, "You have temporarily lost your capacity to imagine, to hope, and to trust. I will be your imagination during this time. I will hold the hope for your complete recovery. I will trust that this experience will somehow be used for good." That's exactly what we do at Recovery Cafe for our members who suffer from so many different things. In a members' survey, 91% of our members reported that being part of Recovery Cafe's community restored their capacity for hope. And capacity for hope is crucial in the healing journey. We're not only committed to restoring hope in the members at the Seattle Recovery Cafe, but we are also committed to restoring hope in the 5 recovery cafes that the Seattle Cafe has helped launch in other cities. The third roadblock to spiritual, emotional, psychological well-being is the mindset that we are personally to blame for everything that has happened to us. So the third P word is personal. I'm not saying that we should not take personal responsibility for our choices and seek to repair the damage of past mistakes. What I am saying is that many suffer from a dearth of affordable housing, a lack of decent education, and inadequate physical and mental health care. So, the mindset that they are personally to blame for all of their suffering is untrue and unjust. There is a tendency in our society to blame the poor for their misery, to blame the mentally ill and addicted for their anguish, and to blame those who suffer under broken systems like our criminal justice system for their outrage. This is often an unconscious blaming rooted in the unconscious narratives that some lives are more valuable than others, and that everyone gets what they deserve. These narratives are dangerous to our souls and the soul of our nation, because they allow us not only to blame those who suffer under unjust systems, but they allow us to take personal credit for whatever privilege has come our way. These partially conscious narratives allow us to warehouse mentally ill and addicted people in a disproportionate percentage of people of color for nonviolent offenses, instead of adequately funding effective, affordable means to reclaim lives. There is movement in the right direction in Seattle, thanks to some of the leaders who are here today, like Jim Vollendroff. But the number of people throughout our nation being incarcerated instead of treated for their illness is still appallingly high. We need proximity to and real relationships with those suffering under unjust systems, and we need to be transformed by their suffering. For it will take transformed people to transform systems. We need to examine the unconscious narratives in ourselves which perpetuate injustice, and we need to create new narratives. Narratives in which all lives are valued equally. Narratives in which the suffering of any is the concern of all. As Martin Luther King Jr. put it, our goal is to create a beloved community, and this will require a qualitative change in our souls and a quantitative change in our lives. I'd like to close now by briefly mentioning one more P word. This final P word is not a roadblock, but is actually a gateway to spiritual, emotional, psychological well-being. This P word is purpose. Thomas Merton said, "If you want to know who I am, don't ask me where I live or what I like to eat or how I comb my hair." I think that's funny he said that because he had no hair. But he said, "Ask me for what purpose am I living? And what blocks me from fully living that purpose?" Recovery Cafe was founded on the belief that all of us, no matter how much we've suffered, were created for a general purpose and a specific purpose. Our general purpose, the purpose for which all human beings are created, is to be instruments of love in every life that is touched by ours. Our specific purpose is the particular place and those particular people with whom we put our weight down and offer our lives. If this is your first Standing in the Gap breakfast, we invite you to put your weight down with us, with this particular expression of healing and hope. For those of you who have long made Recovery Cafe one of the particular places where you offer your lives, please know that our gratitude for you is truly too deep for words. Thank you for listening.